Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We're getting together here to go over the 7-game main slate over at DraftKings. The goal is to help you win. If anything we do does help you win, please don't hesitate to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Both those things help us out a lot as far as exposure on YouTube. If you want to check out some other things, you can enter our free Discord and come talk shop with everybody, including us, and we'll hand out core plays for the DraftKings main slate. If you're looking for something else like MMA DFS picks, DraftKings night picks, or FanDuel core plays, we offer all of that on our Patreon. You can catch all those links on our YouTube channel and in Discord. Highly suggest you come visit us with the Discord thing, just because it's always good to get more opinions on your lineups or your picks, whatever you want to do. Iron sharpening iron, all that stuff. So it should be. It's a lot of fun, honestly, with all the people in there. Over 230 members as we speak. A nice, growing, and engaging community. All right, the way we do this, we go position by position, highlighting the best plays of the slate. Starting at point guard, we have James Harden leading the way with a 53-point fantasy projection. And why? Because no Norm or Kawhi tonight. So that makes a lot of sense going up against the Pistons. Why don't we start there? 9.7K. What are your thoughts on Harden?
Yeah, it's hard not to like him. He's going to play a ton. He's going to have the ball in his hands the entire game without those two in there. So no issue with it. The matchup's not an easy one. Like, Detroit is much improved this season. So not a great spot, but the Pistons are on a back-to-back. I guess the Clippers are too. So see about that. But he's a good play under 10K. As usual, point guard's loaded. Last night it was loaded. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of the same guys tonight, including Cade, including Hero, including Trae Young. So there is a lot to like beyond Harden. I don't think he's a must play just because of that, the strength of the position, but on his own, still a great play.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking just at like a price discrepancy kind of thing, I mean, he's $1,000 cheaper than SGA and about the same as Cade. So like those guys obviously in a vacuum look great. There's nothing wrong with them. They both project for over 50 fantasy points as well. But why really? I know they're both coming off of 70 and 75 point outings, and like everybody's going to want to play them because you don't want to miss out on that. But that's the recency bias in a nutshell. And here we have Harden $1,000 cheaper and grading out as a much better play. So I think if I'm going to pay all the way up a point guard at this point, Harden is certainly at the forefront. Don't think there's anything wrong with SG or Cade. I just don't think they are priorities at this point on this slate. There are other options, though. Tyrese Maxey, if in with no Joel Embiid, 50-point fantasy projection against the Bulls. I mean, it does not get much better than that. So certainly he would look good. The interesting thing is going to be like where ownership is going to lie here. Because could we get one of Harden or Maxey or like somebody like Tyler Hero, who looks really, really good as well? Could we get one of them at like basically no ownership possibly? I wouldn't rule it out on 7-game where so many options. So I'll leave you there with Maxey and Hero. I really like Hero right now, but I want to get your thoughts on Maxey and as well.
Yeah, both are in awesome matchups. Atlanta against Miami, like both teams on back-to-back. Atlanta's not a good defensive team to begin with, so no problem with Hero. He's, I think, probable to play tonight, so
yeah,
should be good to go. Maxey dealing with a finger injury. Hard to know what to make of that since he's questionable. If he's out, it's going to be like a fiesta of Sixers value headline with Jared Butler, of course, who probably would start at point guard again, just like he did right before the All-Star break, 3,400. He would probably be maybe the best value on the entire slate once again. But if Maxey's in, he looks great. Chicago is obviously trash, so no problem with that. He's 9K. We were playing Maxey at 10K and above pretty recently, so steep discount for the role without Embiid. So wish you it all. It's an awesome play, and as of now, he's my highest owned point guard on the slate.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I think right now, when you look at projection and price, I think I still like Hero the most because he's cheaper than Maxey and Harden. And because Harden, Maxey, if Maxey's in, obviously, because they are going to look so good, I'm wondering if Hero slowly starts being, overlooked a lot more. So right now, Hero's pulling about 24% ownership, and Max is about the same. So I'd imagine Harden's going to spike up over the 17% too. So it's going to be interesting to see where that falls. Right now, I like Hero a little bit more than those guys, but Harden and Maxey are right there. I like them all three of those guys a lot. That said, there are even more options. You have Trae Young at 9.4. Don't have an issue with that. He's not really a priority for me, but he's still in play. Anthony Edwards at 9.3 gets to run it back against OKC. You were all over Anthony Edwards last night. I mean, good thing you were calling the plays because I was not going to want to play Anthony Edwards against OKC's defense, and there he did, had like 60 fantasy points almost. So once again, he would be in play. Not a priority, I wouldn't think, but I guess you just can't rule Anthony Edwards out. So why don't you give your thoughts on Trey and Anthony Edwards? Like any interest in like pivoting away from Maxey and Harden and going there?
They are definitely secondary plays. I don't think I have massive interest in either of them tonight. We haven't gotten Minnesota or OKC's injury report. They're playing each other again with travel in Oklahoma City this time. Last night's game was awesome, high scoring. The regulars played huge minutes. I wouldn't be shocked if we got guys sitting tonight. Even if they're in, though, like fatigue, I think could be a real factor given the game last night and all that. So I'm not as into Edwards as I was last night. I still think he's certainly playable given his monster role and the usage he gets, without Randall and Gobert and DiVincenzo. But I was more into him last night, I think. Tonight, there's just a lot to like in the upper range for point guard once again. So I'll probably stay there. Like same with SGA. I'm not really getting to him at all. He's just super pricey. 38 minutes last night. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he sat tonight. So we'll see what happens with that. I do think Halliburton's kind of interesting at 8K flat. Like he is typically flashing a pretty wide range of outcomes, but this game against Denver should be competitive. He has shown more consistent upside lately. Perhaps he's rounding back into form after kind of sucking for the first 3 months of the season. So Halliburton, I don't hate. And Jamal Murray on the other side, I think is a comparable play as well.
Yeah, it's just hard to prioritize guys like that when you have these other plays, but 100%, they are a little bit too cheap. There's even Josh Giddey as a run back of the Philly guys. Like, even if Max is in, the Philly guys look pretty darn good with Embiid not there. You have Yabu, which other guys we'll talk about in a little bit, but they all still are going to be in play, if not core plays anyways. Well, not all of them, but you know what I'm saying? So Giddey looks pretty damn appealing. He's been crushing the last 2 games. I think he had like 2 games over 50 fantasy points, one definitely over 60. So he's been really good, projects pretty well, 7.4K. I think he's just kind of volatile. Like I'm not like super into him just because I feel like 1,000 more for like Hero or going up for Harden or Maxey. I just feel like that is way safer. And he has much worse floor than those guys. Knock on wood when it comes to Maxey, because definitely been burned by Maxey before. But how do you feel about Giddey? And I think we kind of blipped over Hero. What are your thoughts on him?
I mentioned Hero against Atlanta, not a defensive team on the second half of back-to-back, so I don't mind that at all. The other guys, like, okay, Giddey's fine. He's just kind of pricey, and the rug can be taken out from under him at any point, it seems, from a minutes perspective. So
right.
I get it. I don't think he's someone I'm going to be building around, but certainly playable. I have more interest in the 6K range guys, the 2 Utah guards, Collier and Keontae George, once again, with the Jazz resting pretty much all of their other regulars tonight. And then Simons, still going back to the well with this asshole who always sucks. But if the game's close, which it hopefully will be, I think he's a pretty good play at 6-7 once again, even though I know he's going to burn everyone again. But it is what it is. I think he's fine value overall.
Yeah, I'm wondering where that Giddey ownership falls, because I think I'm with you here. I think he's a fine tournament play, but I think Giddey is just the kind of guy I would only really be interested in if nobody else wants to play him. Like 7.4 Giddey on a bigger slate with a ton of other options, that feels kind of gross. If it was like, if we just didn't have so many good plays elsewhere and he wasn't weirdly getting ownership, I would be a lot more into him. I'm with you on George and Simons. Obviously, I lean George. He's a little bit cheaper, better projection. Not the same mouthwatering matchup, but I feel like I've been burned by Keontae George far less than Anthony Simons. Not that we should really factor that in all the time, but George just looks a little bit better. Don't have a problem with either. Isaiah Collier to a lesser degree, but also still in play just because all the Utah guys are dead. Not really a ton of value at point guard. Lonzo Ball's okay at 5. Killian Hayes, we can do that dance again. 27 minutes in the start last time. I mean, he'll face the Wizards at 4.1K. I don't hate it. Don't like it, but I don't hate it. I think it's in play. If he starts again and you can hope for pushing 30 minutes in the smash spot in the name of Cole fucking Anthony, I think he's still definitely in play. I don't think I'll make him a core, but he'd still be in play. Is there anybody else that's like cheap here. I mean, I guess if you think SGA is going to be out, Kason Wallace is one guy we might want to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah, totally depends on who else sits. Like they have a
Right.
lot of bodies in the rotation all the time, so we'll see what happens. I'm hoping there will be OKC value. I feel okay about it, but I would feel better about that than this Killian Hayes, Davion Mitchell, kind of Chris Dunn price range. I think Dunn is okay given the Clipper injuries and stuff, but not someone I'm super psyched to pay 4.5 for. And then Keon Johnson, I think, is fine as well. Still 5,500, shows occasional ceiling. Playing the Wizards, leverage if Killian's going to be owned again, which I don't know if he will be, but
Right
certainly
now,
feel
no.
better about Keon than Killian Hayes.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Dunn is the one who's garnering the ownership right now. Like, I don't like the ownership part, but for $400 more, he certainly is the more appealing option when you compare him to Hayes. Simply a better actual player. And obviously, there's usage opening up with no Norm or Kawhi. So I agree. Like, do you love playing Chris Dunn? Not really. But I think right now, as things stand, Chris Dunn is a pretty good value at that price. For the other stuff, we'll just have to wait and see what pops up. All right, over at shooting guard, Anthony Edwards leads the way there by a good deal. Eight fantasy points better than anybody else. Jamal Murray is behind him. We already touched on these guys. Edwards is a fine tourney play, not really a priority for me. There's other guys I like in that similar price range. But if you want to get Anthony Edwards at lower ownership, that's fine. Jamal Murray's fine. Dyson Daniels he wrecked last game. He's just been rock solid. I don't have a problem with him at almost 7K. Just not really like a priority for me. This feels like a value position. Quentin Grimes at 5.6, Kelly Oubre at 5.5. Those guys look really good. I think they're really good plays anyways. If Maxey is out, they just become absolute locks for me. And then, let's keep going down further. Keon Johnson, you already mentioned. I have no problem with him, which feels gross because the Nets, you never know really what they're going to do. But they're kind of playing these guys that are there with no D'Lo. Obviously, Ben Simmons jettisoned. They just have like their 3 or 4 guys that we can feel reasonably good about. Keon Johnson, Cam Johnson, those kind of guys. So I don't mind that. The other guy I was looking at earlier, and you can stop me if I'm way off base here, but Kevin Huerter at 3.6K is kind of interesting. So why don't you give your thoughts on
I was going to bring him up if you didn't bring him up because they didn't have Io. They don't have Patrick Williams.
Yes,
I'm not excited about it like you seem to be. But he's
I'm not excited about Kevin Huerter. I'm excited about getting 3.6K guy who's going to maybe push for 30 minutes in a game where I want a lot of options from the other side. So I think he's a pretty interesting value play right now. So why don't you give your thoughts on him and just where you're at shooting guard in general?
Yeah, it's a bounce. I think Oubre in the mid-range along with Grimes are both very strong plays. So I don't have an issue playing them together, just given the state of the Sixers. And if Maxey's out, they're going to be even better. So happy to play him regardless. Into ownership, I don't mind it at all. Huerter, if he is owned, that's someone I might pump the brakes on playing into ownership. Just very scoring dependent. If his shots aren't falling, he's not doing a damn thing out there. So if Huerter is going to be owned at any degree, I'm not interested. But if he's going to be somewhat contrarian, which he could be, depending on what else happens between now and lock news-wise, I think he's interesting given the minutes without Io. And the matchup, like we said, a run back with Chicago is interesting if we're going to be playing like 2 to 3 Sixers in the lineup. So I'm okay with it. In the same vein, I'm okay with Kobe White. Like he's been trash for quite a while now, but the minutes are pretty safe. He has guard forward eligibility, still under 7K. Without Levine, he's essentially the guy from a usage standpoint. So willing to play Kobe White again, even though it burns me all the time. And then I think another cheap one to consider is Svi for Utah. Just no Clarkson, no Sexton, no Collins, no Markkanen, no Kessler. So like bare bones Utah squad. Svi has minutes. He's been playing, 25 to 30 recently. He's kind of come down. Like he had a very high usage role earlier in the season. He's kind of played like shit lately, but if people are afraid to click it, I'm okay with it at 4K. Another guard forward eligible guy who should have a solid role.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of the ownership kind of just automatically going to the Philly wing guys, like I can see, like right now, like I like your point about Huerter because right now he's at 18%. So I agree, like that doesn't feel great. like playing into ownership on like Killian Hayes the other day, like playing into ownership on him felt not great. So yeah, if he's gonna be like 20% owned, I can certainly see good logic as far as like going away from that. Right now, though, I think he looks like a decent value. Worth noting, Phillies perimeter defense, not great. They give up the 26th worst 3-point percentage in the league. So he's going to let it chuck too. So I think he's pretty good there. I'm not really seeing anybody else. I like the Jazz call outs. It's just going to depend on who actually gets the minutes. Kind of an unknown, but Svi at 4K is a pretty reasonable gamble. I don't think anybody else really stands out here. I guess Isaiah Joe is in the case on Wall Spain if the OKC guys end up sitting, but we don't really know that yet. All right, over to small forward, Jalen Williams. This position blows. Jalen Williams leads the way. As Taylor has said more than once, small forward can fucking die or something along those lines. Jalen Williams, if he's in 7.8K, obviously if like SGA is out or something, he's going to get spiked up quite a bit here in terms of usage and projection. So in theory, he could end up being a good play. Currently not interested at all. Paul George is interesting because obviously he's cheap and there could be no Maxey. And even if there's no Maxey, there's no Embiid. I don't really want to play Paul George though. Whether Maxey is in or out, I think I'm going to take a stand. And I'd play the other Philly guys. I like Yabu, I like Grimes, and I like Oubre. And if Maxey's out, I like Jared Butler. But Paul George, I don't want to play. So where are you at with Paul George and Jalen Williams to start off small forward?
Yeah, J-Dub, if he plays and if Shea's out or something like that, he's going to get a lot of steam from an ownership standpoint, and he should. So I'm more inclined to play him in that kind of scenario than I would be if Shea is in. Paul George, I understand your hesitation because I have the same hesitation. He's injured. He's over 7K again. I understand he's going to play a higher usage role without Embiid, and without Max should be in the guy. But if he has an injured finger, that should keep him sidelined. I don't really have a lot of faith he's going to make shots. So he can get all the shots he wants. It's a matter of making them. And if he's injured, I don't really have a lot of faith that he's going to make them. And it's not like we're paying down. Like if he was 5.5K or something like that, yeah, play Paul George and he's a smash. But 71 into ownership with an injury, there's a lot of opportunity costs overall on the slate in terms of the salary to spend. Not at this position necessarily, so he will get steam, but I'm really not a fan of it. I'm not sure there's much ceiling there at the moment. There are alternatives in the same range. I think Andrew Wiggins is a really good one. He's played 40 minutes in back-to-back games for Miami. They're playing Atlanta tonight. Atlanta without DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, just not a very good defensive team. I assume Dyson Daniels will be focused on Tyler Hero, which could open things up a bit for Wiggins as well. So I like that quite a bit. Cam Johnson came up a bit, but the Wizards, an awesome spot. You can argue 6'4" is still a bit of an underpay. So I'm happy to go back to him, even with the price hike. And Avdia again, wide range of outcomes, super frustrating. Whenever he's chalk, he sucks. Whenever he's not, he's really good. He will probably be chalk tonight. So, proceed with caution. But I think matching the field on 30-ish% ownership is fine. I like all those guys at their ownership levels more than I like Paul George at his.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Paul George, even beyond the fact that he's an aging star who has not been very productive and he's not healthy, is that he's projecting to be kind of chalky. So I don't really want to play into chalky Paul George at this point. I think obviously this could go badly. Paul George could just be like, don't get cute play, comes out, plays 40 minutes, he gets 60 fantasy points. That can happen for sure. If Maxey's out, I'm just probably going to bet on it not happening because he hasn't been very good. And with the ownership thing and everything else, there's just a lot of reasons to not do it. And another reason is because there's alternative options that look really, really good. Cam Johnson, as you mentioned, Andrew Wiggins, Denny Avdia is my favorite small forward play of the slate. If I had to pick one between him, Wiggins, and Cam Johnson, he is the play. The Jazz are 30th in 3-point makes allowed. Denny is going to let it fly. No DeAndre Ayton boosts his usage. There's no reason to not like Denny outside of, like you said, maybe the ownership. But if Paul George ends up being mega chalk, I think that ownership could tick down. Plus, there's just other options here, too, like you already noted. Really like Cam Johnson, too. Awesome spot against the Wizards. He played 35 minutes in his last game. Really no reason for the Nets not to let him and Keon just go out there and play in a smash spot. So I like pairing them together and just kind of jettisoning Paul George to the skies. And then you have Kelly Oubre here, so we can do that, too. And if we want to tick down, we can go to Bryce Sensabaugh. I would imagine with, nobody. Lowry out. Walker out. John Collins out. Everybody's gone. No Sexton, no Clarkson. Bryce Sensabaugh looks like a pretty darn good value here at 4.2K. I don't know if they're going to like super extend him because they never seem to want to, even in these situations. But at 4.2, if he can push for 30 minutes, I think he's probably a good bet to hit. How do you feel about him? And are there any other values down low here that you are comfortable with at small forward?
Sensabaugh, I think, is the best play on the entire slate at any position. I ran 150 lineups right before this show. He's in every single fucking one of them. So
Feels good, I
bet. He gets usage. He's not a very good player, so he doesn't often make the shots he gets. But if you're going to keep taking him, I'm happy to bank on it against Portland. Like, it's an okay enough spot. Portland's not very good, even though they've been a bit better defensively lately. He's just cheap. Good start. The minute should be fine, even if he doesn't start. I like to yank around his role. So not the most comfortable play, admittedly, but someone I'm going to be building around as of now. We got an OKC injury report, and the only name on it is Chet Holmgren, as expected. No one else is listed out or anything. So now they're at full strength, which kind of saps us of that kind of value, which isn't the worst thing in the world because OKC value in general is pretty shaky. But yeah, beyond Sensabaughn's fee on the low end, there's really not a lot else here I like.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So Sensabaugh is mega chalk right now. How do you feel about that? Like playing into that ownership, 38%.
I'd rather play him as mega chalk than someone like Hayes, because at least Sensabaugh is a good per minute guy. So like, I have pretty good confidence that he's going to be able to pay off a $4,200 salary. So, you know, eating chalk in NBA is not always a bad thing, and that's chalk I'm okay with eating right now.
Yeah, that is true. All right. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anybody else either. We'll have to see if news opens things up. Let's see. Zaire Williams, 5K. I think he's okay against the Wizards. It's another one worth mentioning. Just because those main Nets guys, I think the main three, Keon Johnson, Cam Johnson, and Zaire Williams, I think they're all solid plays, and they're not very expensive in one of the best matchups you can ask for. All right, at power forward, Bam Bam leads the way with the 43-point fantasy projection. Another not so great position. I mean, honestly, it's looking very obvious that the pay-ups on this slate, you got to go get a stud point guard, if not two, and probably consider paying for Jokic. Like power forward and small forward, not that great. That said, Bam looks totally fine. The Hawks are a really good matchup. He has a good projection, not really looking like he's going to be very chalky, so I don't mind him. Naz Reid in the same matchup he had yesterday, he smashed. He's been smashing every single day. Rudy Gobert remains out. Julius Randle remains out. So in theory, Naz Reid still looks good. I feel like the price is a little bit high at this point, and the matchup obviously isn't good. So I think I kind of lean Bam there, or I'd just start paying down at power forward.
Yeah. I guess I slightly prefer Bam. I feel like Nas has a higher ceiling, but the matchup is brutal. They just played each other last night, all this stuff. So I am getting more Bam than Nas right now. I do think Nas is still perfectly fine, assuming Gobert is out again. Otherwise, it's a lot of the same guys. I thought he was doubtful. I don't know. Anyway.
Saw it on Underdog 23 minutes ago. He's out.
There you go.
There you have it.
Cam Johnson, Denny Avdia here. There is cheap stuff. Yabusele, like you mentioned, without Embiid, going to start at center, under 5K now, so that's a pretty good price tag on him. Aaron Gordon, price came up a little bit to 5.3, but he's still underpriced for the role he's playing. He's bounced back a bit after his shitty stretch when he was mega chalk, when he was like 4,200. Indiana's also like a really good matchup for paint scoring, which is what he does best, or one of the things he does best. So no issue with that. George Niang went off last night. Don't really have a lot of faith he will again tonight, but he's still 4-3, playing a huge role for Atlanta. I didn't mention Siakam at the high end, but he's fine. I never feel great about Siakam. And then Trendon Watford is another cheapie for Brooklyn, playing a big role off the bench, essentially a backup point guard who is a center power forward type. So I like the spot for him against Washington. I think he can pay that off pretty easily.
Yeah, I assume you're with me on not eating the KJ Martin chalk.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, he started the last game. I think he played like 29 minutes. He's 3.9, so I get why you would play him, but really don't know what his ceiling is. Not a huge scorer. Doesn't really do a lot while he's out there anyway. So between the two cheap forwards on Utah, I'd much prefer Sensabaugh, especially because you can play him at small forward.
Yeah, agreed. I just don't want to play into ownership on KJ Martin in general either.
Yeah, they can start like Potter. They could start Filipowski. There's not a
Right.
guarantee that he would even Cody Williams. Like it's not a guarantee that KJ would start again. I think he's okay, but not someone I'd be excited to play.
Yeah, I would keep him in my player pool. I just don't want to like get a crazy amount of exposure to a guy who's
No,
just
you do
not.
not.
He's just not a good fantasy player. I think that about. I mean, I'll just say what I'm probably doing is going Cam and Denny at the 2-4 spots like most of the time. I just like them both a lot individually, and I just don't really care for the positions right now. So nothing wrong with Bam as the best projecting power forward. Nothing wrong with dropping down to Bryce, who you can also just use at the forward spot or utility if you want to. I just think that's the way I'm going to start off my build. I'm going to get exposure to those guys. Ownership be damned. All right, at center to wrap things up, we have Nikola Jokic leading the way. His price has actually come down to 12K. Part of that is probably because the Nuggets are getting healthier. But he's facing the Pacers, which is a really good matchup, and he's coming in with a nasty 65-point fantasy projection. 70% ownership feels pretty light. Right now, I'm finding the balanced build is like what I like the most, but I feel like especially with all this attention on these really interesting guard plays, I feel like Jokic is going to go even more overlooked, plus the lack of like truly elite value. What do you think about Jokic here? I mean, I would imagine considering where the ownership is now, you would gladly be over, but are you like aggressively going out of your way to build around him?
Yeah, I think I will. I feel better about him than I do about the other spends at point guard and stuff. I don't know why he took 7 shots the other night. That's pretty disappointing. But the matchup against Indiana for paint scoring, like I said, is about as good as it gets. It's Miles Turner is not a very good defender overall. So it's a great spot for Jokic. I understand that if you pay 12K for him and he gets you 46, you are feeling pretty shitty about it. But I think it's fine. Like there's enough cheap stuff with Utah and Philly to where I think it's pretty easy to get to him. So I never trust the ownership. Like it says 17%. He's probably going to be like 40%, and it is what it is. But he's the only guy on the slate who has a pretty realistic path to 95 fantasy points. So hard to overlook that. I'm happy to pay for him. I think pairing him with Filipowski is something I'll probably do a lot. Filipowski probably going to start for Utah. I don't love that he's center only. So that obviously locks up those 2 spots. But Utah, without the other centers in there, it's going to have to give him plenty of minutes. He's a decent enough per minute guy. They're playing Portland without DeAndre Ayton. So it's essentially him against Klingon and Jabari Walker. So fine enough spot. I want to like Klingon. But the fact that he's played under 20 minutes in 2 straight games without Robert Williams, or with Robert Williams in the first one and without him in the last one, does not give me a lot of confidence. But 5-5 against Utah without their bigs, I think it's playable again. I just wouldn't be doing it at a high clip.
Yeah, I mean, worth noting the last game in particular, 4 fouls, and the Blazers won by like 60. So,
Yeah.
And he still got 20 minutes. So, I don't know. I wouldn't read that much into it. I think Klingon is a volatile play. So, at that price, I can totally see why you wouldn't want to go there. Thing is, though, he's a nice GPP play. Amazing spot against the Jazz. He exhibited a massive ceiling just 3 games ago. It's 55 fantasy points. I like him a lot, especially if he's not going to garner ownership. And right now, he is not. Kyle Filipowski could be a great play. The problem with him is don't know for sure how many minutes he's going to get. And also, he's not even that cheap. 4.6K for just like one of many spare ass Utah players. We're just throwing it up against the wall here. So I think he's a fine try at 4.6. Projects better than Bryce Sensabaugh. So like if you wanted to pick one or the other, the only downside really is that he's center only, like you said. So there's that. One guy that I love on this slate, especially if you're not going to go Jokic, Zubac.
Oh.
Well, I mean, we'll get there, but no, Zubac, so he's too cheap. 7.5K, no Kawhi, no Norm. The usage is gonna go through him and Harden. Like, who else on the Clippers are you confident about getting more opportunities? He's definitely going to get more work, and the Pistons are not a scary matchup at all. I mean, Jalen Duren's probably just going to get foul trouble here, to be honest. So he looks really good at 7.5. If you don't want to play Jokic, that's the first center that I'd be looking at. Claxton looks pretty good too at 5.9K. I mean, the Wizards are the best matchup for big men. That has never really changed. So Claxton's kind of too cheap for that. Minutes projection is a little bit light, so it is what it is, but he's not like crazy chalk, and the Wizards are just a really good spot. Don't hate Miles Turner at 6.2K. Also don't mind Onyeka Okongwu at 6.1. Not because they're like amazing plays, but just because they both do have really nice ceilings, and they're just continue to be a little bit too cheap for what they can do for you. That's probably going to do it. Do you have any extra things to say about those guys?
No, I do think Claxton's a pretty strong play at the price.
Sure.
Probably too cheap for that matchup in the role. I'm okay with Vooch. He's been kind of mediocre since they traded Levine, but the matchup against Philly without Embiid is potentially very advantageous. He's 7,500, so he's cheaper than he was, a couple of weeks ago. We want Chicago runbacks with the Philly value. I think he's a really good one who's probably not going to be super chalky. And then I mentioned Watford. I mentioned Aaron Gordon. You can play here, but yeah, it's not the greatest center slate once you get past Zoo. I guess Hartenstein without Chet is worth a mention under 7K, but just kind of a pure dart throw in tournaments probably.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. 6.8K. It's not. They seem like even when Chet's not in there, they're kind of limiting him a little bit. They're not like letting him go full bore like they were when Chet was fully dead. So worth mentioning, plus the back-to-back thing. But he could definitely feast. He's basically just running into Naz Reid. So yeah. All right, let's wrap it up with our general strategy for the slate and our flag plant if you have one.
Yeah, I think Utah value looks like the way to go. I think you can make a case to play as many as 4 of them. I think I might be more comfortable with a max of 3. I'll kind of play with it and see how it goes, and we can discuss it in Discord. But Utah value, Philly value, and then paying up for Jokic, I think that's going to be the chalky way to go. So a balanced build is viable, but I'm inclined to pay for Jokic in the spot. I think my flag plant, let's see. I'll go with Claxton, just under 6K against the Wizards. I feel like he's got a pretty clear path to success there. Not someone I typically play with a lot of confidence, but it's about as good of a spot as it gets.
Yeah, my flag plant this morning was going to be Hero. Before the Kawhi Norm news was made official, I knew they were questionable, so I was kind of looking at Harden a little bit, but even so, as things stand, I think Hero projects pretty nicely compared to guys like Maxey and Harden, who could be pretty chalky. So it's going to really come down to like his ownership right now at 24%. Do I really want to bypass these other guys? Like for what is the reasoning? Only saving money, I guess. Like I have to have a good reason to do these kind of things. So I think Hero's a great play no matter what. But he's a lot more interesting to me if his ownership starts dipping down due to the news that benefits Harden considerably. But if Maxey is in as well, like if Maxey's out, then it's really going to be a lot of the ownership is going to be divided between Harden and Hero because they look so good and they're not very expensive. The other thing is just going to be I don't want to play Paul George. Like he's going to carry some ownership if either way. But if Maxey's out, Paul George is definitely going to carry ownership, and I don't want to play Paul George. So these kind of stands can totally screw you over, but that's probably my biggest flag plant of the slate. If he's going to be chalky at 7.1K, let me get all the other Philly guys instead. All right, that does it for us. Hopefully it helps you out. If it does, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel so you get alerted to more videos just like this in the future. Also consider joining us in Discord. Come in there, talk shop, get extra advice, get our core plays free for the DraftKings main slate. And if you also play DraftKings night slate, play MMA DFS, and like to play FanDuel, you can head to our Patreon to get those for a reasonable monthly price. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.